Hello and welcome. I'm Teri Cross Davis, the Poetry Coordinator for the Folger Shakespeare Library. Welcome to Opened Ground, a project for Poetry Day Ireland that is produced by Solas in partnership with the Folger and Poetry Ireland. We have assembled 4 different poets from all over the nation with one request. Talk about one of your favorite poems by an Irish poet. We will hear from contemporary poets Beth Ann Fennelly, Francisco Aragon, Jennifer Chang, and Charif Shanahan, who talk about work by Irish poets from Paula Meehan to Wong May. Please enjoy these poetic slices of inspiration as we recognize and celebrate Irish poetry and its incredible reach. We hope the words of poetry resound and echo with you. And on behalf of the Folger Shakespeare Library and Solas Nua, thank you for joining us.
Hi there, my name is Beth Ann Fennelly, and I'm coming to you from Oxford, Mississippi. Very excited for the opportunity to talk about an Irish poem that I love. I've chosen Paula Meehan's Child Burial. I'm going to read it to you and then talk a little bit about why I think it's so good. Child Burial. Your coffin looked unreal, fancy as a wedding cake. I chose your grave clothes with care, your favorite stripy shirt, your blue cotton trousers, the smell of wood smoke, of October, your own smell there too. I chose a gansey of hand-spun wool, warm and fleecy for you. It is so cold down in the dark. No light can reach you and teach you the paths of wild birds, the names of the flowers, the fishes, the creatures. Ignorant you must remain of the sun and its work, my lamb, my calf, my eaglet, my cub, my kid, my nestling, my suckling, my colt. I would spin time back, take you again within my womb, your amniotic lair, and further spin you back through 9 waxing months to the split seedling moment. You chose to be made flesh, word within me. I'd cancel the love feast, the hot night of your making. I would travel alone to a quiet, mossy place. You would spill from me into the earth, drop by bright red drop. Okay, Paula Meehan, born 1955 in Dublin, still living in Dublin, a playwright, perhaps like Evan Boland, someone who early felt the pressure and the glory of being in the land of Yeats and Seamus Heaney, but really finding her own a lot by telling women's stories, which is one reason why I love her work. Was influenced by the Beats, including Bob Dylan, but there's very little of that sense in this very spare poem. The lines are quite short, sometimes 3, 4, 5 words, really stressing kind of the paucity and the vulnerability, the poetic line mirroring the experience of this attenuated, precious thing. Written in couplets, because it's a poem of uncoupling. Very straightforward title, Child Burial. In a way, one could contrast it to Dana Gioia's poem, also about the death of a child, called Planting a Sequoia, that misdirects you into the poem. You don't really see where it's coming. This one's right up front. Opening description of the wedding cake, a really arresting image, very visual, reminding us how small this casket would be, and the irony, of course, that the speaker's not going to be around for this child's wedding. I chose your grave clothes with care, she continues, your favorite stripy shirt. I love the word stripy there and how it allows us to have a sense of the child's age, old enough to have a favorite, but still calling it stripy, a kind of nickname. So what are we, maybe 3, 4, 5, 6? Your blue cotton trousers, she continues. They smelt of wood smoke of October, the long O sound, your own smell too, she continues. I chose a gansey or a sweater of hand-spun wool, warm and fleecy for you. Fleecy, so we have cotton, we have wool, we have all these things coming out of the earth. The child will be fleecy in this woolen jumper, making us think of the ewe, the baby lamb, all these natural images, because this creature that came out of the earth is going to be returned to the earth. It is so cold down in the dark, she continues, very sober, very quiet line. No light can reach you and teach you the paths of wild birds. Well, it's the mother who also won't be able to teach about the wild birds or the sun and its work or the names of flowers. There's a moment where syntactically she gets tonally almost a bit formal with this ignorant you must remain of the sun and its work. You feel this rigid control enacted by the syntax that kind of bursts open in this thing that comes next. Until this point, all of these couplets have been end stopped. And then we have this almost sense of loss of control. My lamb, my calf, my eaglet, my cub, my kid, my nestling, my suckling, my colts. I would spin time back, spinning here, reminding us of the hand spun wool that we've just seen. Also this idea of spinning almost like a fairy tale, or spinning the earth in reverse, spinning time in reverse. Take you back again within my womb, your amniotic layer, again with this sense that the child is this creature that she's made. And further spin you back through 9 waxing months to the split seeding moment. We expect split second moment, but a split seeding moment. You chose to be made flesh, word within me. Interesting moment there, because what we really want to hear is word made flesh. We kind of hear an echo of that, but that is undone and unraveled, just in the way this child's life has been unraveled. It's not the incarnation, word made flesh, it's the opposite of that. I'd cancel the love feast, the hot night of your making. I would travel alone to the quiet, mossy place. She's returning this child to the earth, but also mossy, making us think maybe of gravestones. She ends, you would spill from me into the earth, drop by bright red drop, ending with this image of the menstrual blood returning to the earth. It's such an amazing and sad poem. Why do we turn to poems? What truth do we find there? Here, one of the truths I find is the opposite of some of those easy platitudes we've always heard in times of trauma, especially, the ones that are going to come from, well-meaning strangers. Oh, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and better to have lived and lost than never to have lived at all. Bullshit, right? She, at this point, at least when she's writing the poem, the speaker is claiming she rather would not have had this baby than to have this child and lost this child. And it's a startling truth that shakes me to my core. And that's why I love this poem. Thank you, Paula Meehan, for writing it. Thank you, Teri Cross Davis and the Folger Shakespeare Library for giving me an opportunity to talk about it. Thank you for listening.
Hello, my name is Francisco Aragon. A little over 20 years ago, when I was a grad student, I had the good fortune of doing an independent study in Irish poetry. The inherent interest I had in the field deepened that semester when I was exposed to new voices such as Cara O'Sharkig, Derek Mahan, and Nuala O'Donnell, to name 3 new voices I discovered that semester. But my first meaningful exposure to an Irish poet took place in the fall of 1985 when I was an undergraduate. An Irish poet was in residence on the Berkeley campus that year, and although I wasn't eligible to take his workshop, hearing that poet read and speak about his work, and then one day mustering the courage to drop in on his office hours to show him a poem, even though I wasn't formally his student, rendered my experience with him, as modest as it was, as one of a half dozen crucial moments in my trajectory as an artist in my formative years. What I learned from this Irish poet was the various modes of rhyme: internal, slant, and above all, half rhyme. In the history of poetry in the English language, the consonant end rhyme is what gets most of the attention. But the poet I want to celebrate today was a master of the half rhyme. Here we go. The Locket by John Montague. Sing a last song for the lady who has gone, fertile source of guilt and pain. The worst birth in the annals of Brooklyn. That was my cue to come on, my first claim to fame. Naturally, she longed for a girl, and all my infant curls of brown couldn't excuse my double blunder, coming out the wrong sex and the wrong way around. Not readily forgiven, so you never nursed me. And when all my father's songs couldn't sweeten the lack of money, when poverty comes through the door, love flies up your chimney, your favorite saying. Then you gave me away. Might never have known me if I had not cycled down to court you like a young man, teasingly untying your apron, drinking by the fire, yarning of your wild young days, which didn't last long for you, lovely Molly. The belle of your small town landed up mournful and chill as the constant rain touches it, wound into your cocoon of pain. Standing in that same hallway, don't come again, you say roughly. I start to get fond of you, John, and then you're up and gone. The harsh logic of a forlorn woman, resigned to being alone. And still, mysterious blessing, I never knew until you were gone that always around your neck you wore an oval locket with an old picture in it of a child in Brooklyn. As the son of Nicaraguan immigrant myself, one of the things that drew me and draws me to this poem, in addition to its mastery of rhyme, is that embedded in this poem is a migration story, the story of Irish immigrants. John Montague's origin story made New York and the United States and American poetry in general, I would argue, another part of his poetics. He befriended a number of American poets during his numerous and extensive stints here, including a poet I had the good fortune to study with in graduate school, Gary Snyder. But my parting thought is this: John Montague was the first Irish poet I fell in love with, and the Irish poet whose work I have most affection for to this day. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Chang, and I'm going to read a couple poems to you today. One by Louis MacNeice and one by Wang Mei. I guess I'll read first, and then I'll talk a little bit about why I chose them. This first one is by Louis MacNeice, and it was published in the mid-20th century, I think in the late 50s or 60s. I'm not entirely sure. The title is I Am That I Am. In the beginning and in the end, the only decent definition is tautology. Man is man, woman, woman, and tree, tree, and world, world, slippery, self-contained, catch as catch can, which when caught between the beginning and end, turn other than themselves, their entities unfurled, flapping and overlapping. A tree becomes a talking tower and a woman becomes world. Catch them in nets, but either the thread is thin or the mesh too big, or thirdly, the fish die and man from false communion dwindles back into a mere man under a mere sky. But dream was dream and love was love, and what happened, happened, even if the judge said it should have been otherwise. And glitter glitters, and I am I, although the dead are dead. So what I love about that poem is the playfulness which McNeice wields the to be verb. He's playing with tautologies, which is a way of defining something by using itself. So man is man, woman, woman, and tree, tree. But that's not really how poetry is written. And I think there's this kind of slipperiness with which he flips a switch and suddenly the to be verb or the definitions start yielding metaphors, transformations. McNeice was a poet born in Ireland, but educated in England, and he was affiliated with Auden and Stephen Spender. And yet there was always a kind of a sense of his outsiderness, being amongst these English poets. And he was a classics lecturer, so I was a failed classics student. And I think I've always been interested in the slipperiness of language and also the kind of exquisite ways that syntax keeps changing what we think words mean. And I like that the way this poem plays with that. I feel like I see the classics inspiration there, where he's thinking about how long he can extend the law of language. And there's even a judge in there. So I also think it reveals some of his distrust of writing in the king's tongue, so to speak. The next poem I'm going to read is by another poet, not Irish, but has lived in Ireland for the last, I guess, 3 or 4 decades, and also has a kind of distrust of language in her poem and in her work. Her name is Wang Mei. She's, I believe, born in China, raised in Singapore, but came to the United States to get her MFA in Iowa in the 1960s, published 3 books of poetry, and then expatriated to Dublin in the 1970s, where she's lived ever since. But she published a book recently in 2014, and she wrote in the book, it's called Picasso's Tears. The writing, often exquisite, was also difficult. Words can seem your enemy, and the result reads like poetry. And I think it's a sense of the language not quite belonging to you, but also being the material with which you express yourself, that I'm really attracted to in these 2 poems and in these 2 poets who have an uncomfortable relationship with their language, even as they have chosen English as the material of their art. So this poem also plays around with the to be verb, and it's called Silence by Wang Mei. Silence is a wooden horse, dead in a child's evening, is at first a short silence, then it grows like a jaw. Silence is a tree that follows you into your sleep, is the distance between any 2 persons, is the 3 rocks you play with daily, which teach you new words. Silence is all the hooks I have swallowed and ancient. Silence is things to be said quickly and then silence. Lend me bones, fish. Lend me lies and distances, horizon. Lend me nothing, water. Silence is the willow I throttled, is the ghost of a swan, is the ear I buried, the well I poisoned, all the reflections and connections. Silence is a layer of hair and nails, all the waste and accumulation. Bear with me, beast of burden. We carry each other like beast of burden. trying to drown now would be like water trying to drown itself in water. Bear with me. Silence is a will you perfected, the car you polished till it shines, like a black patent leather shoe, is visceral convulsion, is where you sit in the owl's eye, is all the colors I absorb, is 5,000 years of moonlight and fatigue. So this is from her second book, Reports. Silence by Wang Mei. It's published in 1970. And I love that you don't know where the to be verb is going to take you. And I love the apostrophes. Is she calling silence a beast of burden, or is there a beast of burden she's in conversation with? Is English the beast of burden? So there you have it. 2 poems from poets of Ireland.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much to everyone at the Folger for including me in this program. My name is Charif Shanahan, and I'm delighted to be here and to share a poem by the poet Evan Boland, who I had the honor and privilege of working alongside at Stanford, where I was a Stegner Fellow and then a Jones Lecturer. And I'd like to share a poem called "For That Called Body is a Portion of Soul." And before I do, I want to share how I discovered the poem or rediscovered the poem. In the summer of 2020, shortly after the pandemic took hold, I was preparing to move to Chicago. I was leaving my position at Stanford to take an appointment at Northwestern, and I fell into an internet rabbit hole reading about Chicago and watching different videos about Chicago. And I came across a reading that was given at the Chicago Humanities Center by my now colleague, Natasha Trethewey. And Natasha mentioned in the Q&A that Evan's work had been important to her. Someone asked, which books and which poets she'd been reading while she was working on the book that she had read from. And when Natasha shared that, I started to think about how poets find each other across distances and borders of all sorts, how we teach and learn from one another and what we mean to one another. And I went to my bookshelf and I took down Evan's "A Woman Without a Country," and I opened it at random to the poem that I will share today, "For That Called Body is a Portion of Soul." I read it and a bit later went to sleep. And the next morning, I learned the news from the creative writing program administrator at Stanford that Evan had passed. Evan was in Ireland with her family, and we were 9 hours behind Ireland in California. And what that meant was that as Evan was passing from this plane to the next, I was having that private experience in my apartment looking at this poem. And when I shared that story with a poet friend, the poet friend said, "She visited you," though I hadn't thought it so until the friend said it. And so here is the poem. "For that called body is a portion of soul." On winter evenings, when she finished painting, my mother's plain-handled brushes were left soaking in a lost summer. Not in distilled turpentine, ready to be dipped in cadmium, alizarin, the colors of skin and drizzle, but in this product of sand, product of silica, sensory transient of the process of making the dense clear. Little jam jar, making obvious in alliteration its origin in a hot afternoon when crab apples were pulled down from treetops, boiled in a copper pot, poured into glass and left cooling. A scalded jewel on a pantry shelf. Only to be emptied out again, filled with turpentine, a winter emblem of dualities. Even the crab apple is seeking a sky of inferences to constellate with. The rosiness of a larger fruit, the hint of a sea creature sidling in another element. When I was expecting my second child, my mother turned to me. She said, "Surely you don't believe you're 2 souls at this moment." there's so much that I admire about this poem, chief of which perhaps is the way in which memory, domestic, familial, in this case, a speaker remembering her mother painting on winter evenings, opens up inquiry into the very nature of our species, our relationship to one another, our interconnectedness. Despite the grave injustices that exist on this earth, the havoc that we have wreaked and continue to wreak on one another through genocide and various expressions of hatred, which is often attached to our very bodies, the bodies which the poem asserts are portions of soul, or as I hear it, the one soul. The poem begins with the emblem of dualities it will come to name near its end, the mother painting in winter evenings, but leaving the brushes in what the poem calls a lost summer. The little jam jar she uses to hold the brushes once held crab apples that were boiled in a copper pot that once were connected to a tree. That jam is emptied out. The jar itself was once sand. There's now turpentine inside. And so the way that the poem kind of meditates on all of the interconnectedness and interdependence of these objects, these inanimate objects, or really these non-human objects or things, right? But more than the interdependence, also the transformation of them, the sand becoming the glass that becomes the jar, right? So where are they separate? How are they different? And then the poem turns, right? After saying even the crab apples is seeking a sky of inferences to constellate with, that even these apples are looking for a relational position, you know, or seem to apprehend or comprehend that relation is part of constitution, one's own individual constitution. And then the poem turns. The attention the mind of the poem pays to these objects, their sameness turns suddenly to the human in this exquisite and stunning final stanza. When I was expecting my second child, my mother turned to me. She said, "Surely you don't believe you're two souls at this moment." And the way that the question is asked, right? The rhetorical structure of that question, surely you don't. It would be preposterous for you to believe that you are two souls. And the language, you're two souls, you are two souls, not you have a soul. Surely you don't believe that the child inside you has a soul and you have your own soul, that you are two souls at this moment. A question that begs the other question, if you do believe in our fundamental separateness, for social reasons or for spiritual or personal reasons, for whatever reason, if you do believe in that, at what point then does the child growing inside the mother acquire its own soul or become its own soul? I don't think the poem seeks an answer to that question, which perhaps is unanswerable, but it draws attention to the question. And so that Evan came to visit me through this poem was particularly meaningful because she knew that some of the questions about interdependence and relation and identity and our subject positions in this world were really motivating forces and questions for me and my own work in my own life, personally, and in my poetry. And so I'm grateful for this poem, for Evan's work, and for this visitation. Thank you so much.